Sometimes we learn Spanish, sometimes we learn Old Norse, sometimes we learn Italian, sometimes we learn Mongolian, sometimes we learn German, and sometimes we learn Basque, Icelandic, Pidgin, and that's okay. I think this is an interesting topic about languages that don't have a lot of resources because, one, this is an obstacle to overcome, but also because this has some social implications as well. So what am I talking about? Basically languages like Spanish, French, German, maybe Mandarin, maybe Japanese. You're going to find resources for them everywhere. Every Duolingo, every Busuu, every word reference is going to have these available. But sometimes we learn languages that aren't included in that special list of really common languages to learn. Something that has like a moderate amount of resources are things like Italian, like Russian, Arabic, and in the last few years, Korean has entered this group. And then there's the languages that are super rare. It's impossible to find anything good. Those are probably African languages, Native American languages, maybe some South Asian languages, maybe some minority languages in Europe. When I say minority languages, I'm thinking of like Frisian, I'm thinking about Basque, I'm thinking about maybe Romansh. And that kind of begs the question, why aren't there many resources? Well, the primary reason is low demand. There's not a lot of learners of this language. And if there's not a lot of learners, there's not incentive for people to create materials, textbooks, websites related to learning these things. There's probably not any government initiatives to spread the language or subsidize companies that try to spread it. And I think it's kind of flawed to look at language learning as a way to make money. This is more than a way to make a quick buck. This is a cultural asset that should be protected just like any piece of art, like any piece of archaeology. And because of that, I think language gets left behind more than other cultural artifacts. And that's a shame. What kind of things are you not going to find with these kind of rare languages? Well, you're not going to find a lot of materials about these languages at the bookstore or on Amazon. But if you look up like French textbook or Japanese kanji help at a bookstore or on Amazon, you're going to find tons and tons of things you can buy and that can help you. With a language like, I don't know, Scottish Gaelic, good luck. And because of that, you're not going to find a lot of books about this language at the library. I can find tons of Chinese textbooks at the library. I can find tons and tons of Spanish novels. I don't think you can find any material for a language like I don't know, Bengali. You're not going to find university classes teaching this language. Universities are also subject to supply and demand because if there's not enough students for this class, it's a waste of time for a professor to teach this class. So if there's not enough students that want this, well, it's not going to happen. I can give a little bit of a personal story. My mom is able to teach Russian, and she taught Russian at the community college in my city, but after a few years there were no students, so they had to cut the class. So as the students went down, nobody could learn it. Even if there's one person that's really passionate, nobody could learn this language now. At this school, I mean to say. You're going to have a difficult time finding tutors. Of course, there's tutors of every language. Italki especially is very good that it has a lot of minority languages, whereas other tutoring sites usually have the big ones. But even if you find a tutor of a minority language, they probably don't get a lot of students, so they're not too experienced. Whereas if you talk to a German tutor, a French tutor, a Japanese tutor, they have tons of students all the time, so they have lots of material, they understand what foreigners make mistakes with. It's going to be hard to find that for a language like Khmer, for example. Of course, because of supply and demand failing this market, you're not going to find learning apps that help you learn languages like this. So of course this includes your Duolingos, your Busuus, and all of that, but also there's a lot of one-off apps that help you learn a language. You're probably not going to find them, or they're going to be really low quality and they were Google translated and no effort went into them. And again, it's not due to any malintent, it's just naturally if there's no demand, there's no reason to put effort into teaching foreigners this language. You're not going to find quality dictionaries for this language because I think the standard these days has become online dictionaries that source their words from online uses of this language. And if it's a language that isn't written a lot or doesn't have a lot of formal writing, you're not going to find a quality dictionary for your Tibetan studies. Google translates a good backup for a lot of languages, but you'll notice that the quality of those translations aren't going to be as good if it's not a commonly used language. So between English and Spanish, that's a super common translator, so that translator is going to be pretty high quality. But something like English to Bulgarian is not going to have a really quality translation because there's not a lot of use of this translator, not enough Bulgarian writing on the internet that Google can use AI to learn from. So how do we overcome this? The problem is obvious. What do you do to overcome it? Use native level content as soon as possible. So usually with something like French or German or Italian or Chinese, you can slowly ease yourself into native level content. There's lots of practice content made for learners, some really simple articles using basic words, or there's textbooks that give you some good dialogues, but you're probably going to look at native level content as soon as possible. There's not a lot of English to Bulgarian content, so I have to use this little grammar book made for Bulgarian children, which isn't a problem for me because it is like a heritage language to me, but this can be a problem for somebody starting from zero. But it's not like this method is useless if you're coming from zero, because you'll see a lot of quality tables in here that maybe explain to you what's going on. Maybe these explanations are going to be gibberish to you, but at least you're going to be reading really quickly and quickly jumping into that content. You're going to have to contact a native through language exchange, definitely, because they're going to be able to tell you that doesn't sound right, that sounds good, because you are not looking at some very high quality sources. You're going to need someone to tell you, that's not how we say it. That's how they said it 100 years ago, because you used a source from 100 years ago. An interesting one, I think, is you can pretend to be a native on social media. You can comment on people's posts. You can even have a burner account that is only used for this, so people think you're a native, so that they act natural around you. If they realize you're a English speaker, or they realize you're the speaker of a language they know, they'll probably switch. But if they think you are just making typing errors, then they'll continue using the natural speech. So you really have to blend in. You're going to need to use any source, no matter how overly academic, no matter how overly convoluted, no matter how cliche it can seem, because you're really strapped for resources. You need to use whatever you have. The one that's coming to mind is at my university, there is a book for the Southern Paiute language. That is a native language that was spoken in the area I live in. I have never found any other resource for this language, and to be honest, I hate this book because their romanizations are really confusing. They're using really strange symbols to represent sounds, but it's the best you have. I'm not saying I'm learning Southern Paiute very deeply, but I opened the book, looked through it just to get a feel for the language. Like dabbling. Dabbling's a better word, yeah, dabbling. Look at content for native children. Sometimes there's a Disney translation of this. Sometimes there are fan translations on the internet for famous things. Look at that content that's made for native children and take as much as you can from that. Those are all the tips I have, which isn't quite enough, but that really shows you how difficult it can be to learn a language with few speakers and few resources. My main thesis for this video is that you should become the demand for a language. I said at the beginning that this problem exists because there's not a lot of demand for the language. It's kind of a shame that some cultural asset like language has become subject to supply and demand, but what else can you do? You need to become the demand for that language. As language enthusiasts, we have a special ability to kind of create demand for languages where others cannot create it. If you are a newbie to learning languages, you're not going to know how to study Occitan. But a more experienced language learner can extrapolate as much as they can from sources, and people can create more resources because they see, oh, there's a little bit of a demand, I can make money off of this. And that's kind of like a social cause. But from your perspective, it should not be discouraging that you don't have a lot of resources. If you really want to learn it, go for it. It is completely possible. Babies learn this language and they don't even have object permanence. They are so stupid. Therefore, we, with our big old brains, can do the same. I think something interesting happened in the last 10 years with the Korean language. I remember first learning it in 2013, and there weren't that many resources of the Korean language. It still was pretty big compared to some of the language I mentioned in this video, But I've noticed a huge change in the last 4 or 5 years just because there's such an increase in interest of learning this language. I think I got kind of creative in 2013, 2014. But in recent years, Korean is on Duolingo, Korean is on the more normie ways of accessing languages. So it's kind of like the enthusiasm of some people really increased the demand. So it's kind of like you as a person can affect the market with your dollar and your social media posting and your efforts. So that's that on that. What do you guys think? Is this a stupid social issue? Am I confused? Am I bad at economics? I don't know. I feel like I'm proselytizing you people, which is not what I meant to do, but I kind of ended up that way. Let me know in the comments below what you think about these thoughts. Have you learned a language that doesn't have a lot of resources? What else did you do that I didn't mention here? What were some challenges you faced that you never faced with French or Spanish or Chinese? Follow me on social media. I try to post there really often. I have a blog where I talk about language things. These days I have a lot of English explanations, but there should be some foreign language explanations in the future. So thank you for watching. I'll see you for a new video very soon, okay? Mama.